Today we are talking about intentional money. So we are not telling you how to make money or even what to do with your money. This is not a get rich quick tip off. We are not money experts. Today is about intentional money. It's about understanding your financial situation, knowing your money values, your money goals, where you want to go with your money, and being cognizant of what your means are so that you can be in control of your financial situation. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, what is your money story? So a money story is your history with money, and how you were brought up influences your attitude to money. So your money story could actually be sabotaging your financial situation. So it's important to understand where your influences are coming from and whether they're positive or negative. It's also your money temperature. So that's a gauge on how comfortable you are with certain situations of money. So if you imagine your money temperature to be like a atmospheric temperature. So imagine $0 is 0 degrees. Some people are comfortable with living in a Canadian winter, which would equate to being in debt, so negative degrees.
Yep.
Some people live in a constant state of debt and they are okay with that, whereas some people aren't comfortable unless they have lots of savings and lots of assets. Whereas other people might not be comfortable with debt, but might also not be comfortable with savings. So that would look like always paying your bills, but never accumulating money, because once you get money, it burns a hole in your pocket and you get rid of it on something. So your money temperature, or your money story, or your money attitude could also be thinking that being rich is bad, or that it's completely unrealistic, like you'll never be a wealthy person, and that rich people are selfish and they have to be ruthless to claw their way to the top. That's a money attitude which impacts how you spend your money and how you manage your money.
Yeah, it also impacts like gaining money. So you think that, oh, I don't deserve this money, and you may not spend it on the right things that you think help your life, I guess, and you may spend it, you may self-sabotage with your money as well, because you've come into some money, or you don't know how to control the excess of money as well. So I guess like learning these things will help you in the future be more comfortable, be more safe with your money.
Yeah, so you may have heard about having an attitude of lack or an attitude of abundance. So if you have an attitude that money will come to me freely, then that's a form of manifesting, law of attraction, putting positive energy out into the universe. Like attracts like. So if you resonate that energy, then the universe will give that to you. This is a theory. So if you have an attitude of money abundance, then money will more freely come into your life. Whereas if you have an attitude of lack, of constantly comparing yourself negatively to other people, like, oh, everyone else gets things and I never get ahead with money, then that's going to resonate and that will perpetuate and it will come true.
Yeah, and you'll also be fearful as well, like making your decisions around money and around your spending and coming from the attitude of abundance is going to be more beneficial. You're going to make the right decisions for yourself and for your values. If you're coming at it from an attitude of fear or lack of money, then the decisions you're making may not be in line with those goals, and you may be feeling desperate, or you may be feeling overwhelmed and those sorts of things, and the decisions you're making may not be as good for you as you think they are in that moment. So trying to just change your mindset a little bit around money if you have fears or lack of money and you're trying to get ahead, I think can really help.
Yeah, I think if you ever act from a position of fear, whether it's about money or anything else, it's not going to be the right choice for you because it's not in line with your intuition.
Exactly.
So I'm going to tell you my money story and then Chris will tell his. And maybe have a think also about what your money story is. So basically, I grew up in New Zealand and we always had enough money to be happy and healthy. Like my parents always made sure that my sister and I had everything that we needed, but we never had like an excess of money. We never really went on holidays and we always had to be conscious of our spending. And I think that's probably similar for a lot of families. And I know that sometimes my parents were stressed about having enough money for things. And then when I grew up and became financially independent of my parents, I was at university and I didn't have much money at all, but I was kind of in this place where I would just spend on anything I wanted. So I would always buy new outfits to go out on the weekend. I would always go out and spend money on drinking. I would travel a lot. Yeah. And then I was in my final year of university. I had just come home from living in London for 2 years. I wasn't working, and so I was probably the poorest I had ever been. I was living on a student allowance from the government, and having such little money at that point in my life was actually the impetus for me to create a budget, because I realized if I was to spend like $14 on playing a netball game that week, I wouldn't be able to pay to get the train to uni. So it really drove home that money is a limited resource, and if you spend on something, you physically can't spend on something else unless you get into debt. But I didn't have a credit card or anything like that. I wasn't getting money from my parents, like I literally had a small pool of money and that was it until I got paid next, and I had to live off that. And then I, I graduated, and after being on a graduate wage for a while, I asked for a pay rise, and finally I was earning a decent living. But I was living back in New Zealand at this stage, and my ex-boyfriend had actually kind of, I guess you could say, peer pressured me into getting a credit card. And so even once I got this pay rise and had a decent wage, every time I got paid, a chunk of that would have to go to my credit card every month. So it's like I wasn't even reaping the benefits of getting more money. And then I got rid of the credit card, and finally I was in a position where I was earning good money and I had an excess of money because I was living within my means. And then Chris and I started dating, and we saved up all this money, and then we went traveling and we spent all of our money. So that's kind of my money story. But also something that's a big influence on my money story is my parents used to give me pocket money when I was a kid. So they would give me $40 a week. And that's quite a lot of money for a child. But with that, I had to do my own budgeting. So I had to pay for my bus, tuck shop, sport, any socializing I did. Like, I had to learn to budget with that set amount. And I think that's a good skill for a child to learn. However, I didn't learn anything about making your money work for you or building wealth, anything like that. And you don't learn that in school either. And I very much had the attitude that you grow up, you get a job, you have an income, you live within your means, and that's kind of your situation in life unless you can earn more money. But I think I also had that attitude about money that like rich people are bad, or it's unrealistic for me to ever be wealthy in life. And it wasn't until dating Chris that like you gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I learned that sorry, I think I've been talking too much, I'm losing my breath. I learned that by having your own business, for example, is a way to not have a cap on your earning potential. And then investing is really the only way that you can develop wealth, like making your money work for you. And so that's kind of the money journey I'm on at the moment.
Yeah, so I think, like you were saying, it's important, those values around money, because that does shape what you do with your money. So going back to those, I think that has influenced your life a lot. And until you have that frame shift of understanding, how the rich actually get rich. And I mean, I know we have these connotations about the rich people, and the disparity between rich and poor is so big these days and getting bigger and bigger. We won't go into that too much, but having that attitude from abundance will help you make decisions for the long term, because that's what money is. It's a long-term thing that we need to think about. And of course, like, if we're only making enough just to get by, it is hard to think of money that way. But if we can change our attitude a little bit, I think that will really help.
So what's your money story?
So for me, money, I'm a bit different to you because I started working straight out of school. So I always had money. Like, I had a weekly wage that would come in every week. I worked a lot. So I guess that's the difference. Like, I didn't go traveling much. I just worked on my apprenticeship. I wasn't getting paid a lot. So every week I would spend my whole wage. Like, I would pay my car off. I would pay board to my parents. I was still living at home. So I think, like you, having that early on in my life, being able to pay bills and having that responsibility of paying those bills really set me up to do that well later on. So I think
I still had to pay bills. I just earned shit all money as a student.
Okay. Well, yeah, like it was more about being similar to you in the fact when you were getting that $40, you would have to budget that and pay for things yourself. So I think that's good to learn early on. And I mean, if anyone has kids, I think that's a really good thing. Even if for whatever reason you don't take the money and spend it on your rent and you just sort of save it for them later, it gives them that understanding of this is how the world works. So we can go into that later, but basically that's how my life was from an apprentice. So I would earn, $300 a week. I would spend all of that and save myself maybe $20 to buy fuel for that week.
And how old were you, like 18 at the time?
Yeah, 17 or 18. So yeah, I was going out drinking, all those sorts of things, and I was in the social scene, so it was like I had to buy a new shirt every week. So my money values...
You had to buy 2 new shirts every week because you would layer your fluoro-coloured polo shirts.
We won't go into the fashion statements that I had back when I was 18. I was very visible, let's just say that.
Says the man wearing a watermelon shirt.
That's true. Maybe they haven't changed too much. But yeah, as I went on in my apprenticeship, I would earn more and more money, but I would still have no more excess than I did when I was earning $300 a week.
Because you would spend more and more money.
Exactly. So yeah, when they talk about living within your means, I would then keep pushing my means to fit my wage, I guess. So. Yeah. And that happened all throughout my life. I would even, get credit cards and things like that, and I would spend money. I would spend a lot of money and not really have anything to save for. So we'll go into savings and all those types of things as well.
I have a question.
Okay.
Like, I know your family, and so like they don't really have those money values, like spending all of their money on frivolous things and getting a credit card for frivolous things. Like, where do you think that spending behavior came from? I
think it was more a social thing. So, I would spend money because I was earning money to show off a bit, I guess. Or
so it was like peer pressure, like keeping up with the Joneses.
It sort of was. Like, I wasn't into like, getting the flashiest car or getting this. Like, I didn't mind that, like the material stuff, but it's more like, if we went out, I would buy people drinks. I'd just be very generous with my money. Yeah. So
you were a big present buyer.
Yeah, I would like to give gifts, and I'd like to spend money on other people and share experiences and those sorts of things. So that's where I think a lot of my money would go to. Like, I definitely wouldn't say no to anything. Like, I wouldn't restrict myself. And if I did go out, I'd have a good time and wouldn't care what I spent, basically. So...
so maybe that comes back to your values as a person, like what we discussed last week.
Yep.
You very much want to be a provider. You want to make people happy. So it could be like your personal values impacting your financial situation and living outside of your means, because your like personal values weren't like... they were probably more powerful than your responsibility with money at the time. Yeah,
I saw money as a trade-off, basically. I saw money as like, okay, well, I earn this money and then I can trade it for happiness almost. Like, I could use it to live in line with my values better. And like, I think we do need to have restrictions and boundaries with our money. And, we were talking last week about intentional living and living in line with your values. And I think the resource of time and money together... and living them in line with your values is important. But yeah, you do have to restrict one and the other, and look how they're influencing each other as well.
It's like recognizing that time and money and energy are all limited resources, and you have to have some control and vision and intention around all of them.
Exactly. So, and then, yeah, we get to a stage where I met you, and then we were starting to share money, and then the budget came in, and, you know, that was a really difficult one for me because I'd never really lived by a budget. So having that budget really helped me see what I was actually spending my money on and how much of it I was wasting and what sort of financial position I was in. And it was pretty, not dire at the time, but, you know, I had some debts there that weren't good debts either. So
yeah, it was like you were earning really good money, but you were still spending more than that. So when I came along and saved your life, what we did was you had 2 credit cards, right?
Yes.
So we consolidated that credit card debt and created a payment plan over 2 years. So that was paying off that debt with no interest.
Yeah.
And then what else did we do? Got rid of your credit cards, obviously.
Yeah, it was just we looked at the finances we had and went from there. But yeah, this podcast's not really about that sort of stuff.
It's your money story.
But it's our build up to our money story, and, you know, what we're doing now is going to be different for everyone else. So
basically, we just assessed your financial situation, created a budget together, and now you live within your means.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the big thing with sharing money. You need to have the same values and be doing the same sorts of things.
So when I was single and managing my own money, I would log into my bank account every day and I would open up my budget spreadsheet, and every day I would track my spending and work out how, like to the cent, how much money I had of my allocated spending left that week. And then, like, when we started sharing money, that became a lot harder. But that's how fastidious I used to be.
So I just got a couple of questions. Did you want to answer them now, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, let's answer them now.
Okay, so Marissa has said, do you use a budget app?
No, I do not. I've had some recommended to me, but we were overseas at the time, so I think we couldn't get them in that location. I am interested in budget apps, but really what I do now is I just have a spreadsheet in Excel. Yeah.
And Alida Ray has said, how do you guys budget?
Okay, so we have a budget spreadsheet and it has formulas. So it's very, very simple. Like, we're not money experts, it's really like the goal of it is just to understand what our income is, what all of our expenses are, and then we have savings goals. And so we have what the barefoot investor would call money buckets. So it's different accounts or different bank accounts for different purposes. So our money goes into one, and then we have automated payments that go out to the different accounts. So that would include like spending, bills, savings, other savings, things like that.
Yeah, we'll go into more of this in the final tips part as well. So, yeah.
But what I think the most important part of our budgeting is that we sit down frequently. We try to do it every week, but mostly it's every month. And even in the Barefoot Investor, which is a book that I recommend people read to understand their own money situation and create money goals, he says, if you've got a partner, if you share money, go out every month, treat yourself to a nice restaurant and get on the same page about your money situation. So yeah, we used to do that. We didn't do it while we were traveling because we had no income, but we do it now. We actually had a budget meeting on Monday, and I think the most important thing is understanding your financial situation, being on the same page as a couple, and having the same financial goals that you both work towards. And the good thing about that is when something comes up that one of you might want to spend money on, you can see whether that harms your goal or if it doesn't harm your goal. And if it does, being comfortable to say no, that's not what we need to spend our money on right now. And you can both be okay with that because you both have the same goals.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a big one. And, we talk about goals and values all the time, and travel goals, life goals, especially when you're sharing a life together, they definitely need to be spoken about. Even if they don't align fully, you need to recognize that and be able to give and get, I guess, with that sort of thing.
We ate different breakfasts this morning and it was very strange to me.
We are pretty much joined at the hip. But Kathy's made a couple of good points in the comments. Maybe a really good tip for someone who doesn't really know where their money is going. So keep an envelope by your door to put all your receipts in every day as you come in the door. And then after a month, you'll realize where your money is going. So I think that's a good thing. And I mean, that's where I came from in my money story, was I was actually afraid to do that. So I think that can be a barrier for people. That can be a fear of people, is to go, oh, I need to have a look at my spending honestly. And I think that is the first step to understanding your financial situation and getting yourself into a better position. So just know that by, sort of unveiling your money spending, if you're not doing it already, can be difficult, but it will benefit you in the long run. And there's no better time to...
I thought you were moving on to the next part.
No.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
But just going back to that receipt one from a sustainability perspective, receipts are actually covered in plastic. They're not recyclable. So it is ideal if you can actually refuse a receipt, but an alternative is just logging into your bank account and seeing where all of your spending is. And even having a set cash amount that you take out every week or every month. And so what your cash spending is if you don't have a receipt, just so you can document that.
Yep. So Mitchell's asked a question. We might get to that a bit later because when we go into some financial stuff, but I'll just leave it up there, Mitch, and we'll get to that one as well. So do you want to move on? Did you do the money values?
No. All right. So talking about money values. So that means spending money on things that are important to you and recognizing what is not important to you and not spending money on that. And I think a lot of people don't actually do this. We spend money on things without really thinking if it supports our money values and our ultimate goals. And it knowing what your money values are gives you permission to spend money on things that actually make you happy, even if they might be considered frivolous by someone else, so long as you're living within your means. So for example, say you want to get a facial. It could be considered frivolous, but if it truly makes you happy and you can afford it, then there's nothing wrong with spending your money on that because it's your money value. So just make sure that you are not spending money on that which isn't meaningful to you, and then you should have that money to be able to spend on a facial. And that brings us to quality over quantity. So if quality over quantity is a value of yours, it is a value of mine. I would be happier to spend double the amount on a really good quality facial and feel like I had a real treat and get facials half the amount of times than to spend to get a cheap facial in some dodgy suburban bedroom and not feel like I had been treated, but to get it more frequently. So just assess whether you prefer quality or you prefer quantity, and give yourself permission to spend money on stuff that's meaningful to you, even if it's frivolous.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's important, like you said, to make sure you understand the difference between the two and what impacts they're going to have later on. Because obviously, we're talking about intentional stuff here, but with the sustainability side, if that is your value, then, quality stuff is going to last longer generally. So you have to look into those things as well.
Yeah, good point.
We'll move on to the next one. So understanding your financial situation.
So this is what you have already touched on. So you mentioned that you actually had fear and shame around knowing where your money was going.
Yep.
Ignorance is not bliss. If you don't know where you're spending your money, then you are not in control of your financial situation and you're not going to reach your money goals. So understanding your financial situation means assessing where you are spending your money And that means you can cut out spending on things that aren't meaningful to you. So make a list of all of your sources of income, make a list of all of your expenses and the frequency. So even sneaky ones like bank fees or interest on debt or your cash spending or direct debits or subscriptions, which is like a constant financial commitment. And know all of your assets. So work out how much you have in super, work out how many super funds you have, work out the insurances you're paying on that super. So maybe you're actually doubling up on income protection and you don't need to. Understand where your potential investments are and how they're doing. And do your broker tip.
So it's probably important, and a lot of people don't know this, but basically if you go see a broker, I know here in Australia anyway, like it doesn't cost you money. So the broker will give you suggestions based on your financial situation and then do research on things like super and where your money is and that sort of thing. And they get paid commissioned by different lenders and the banks and those sorts of things. So they make
money elsewhere, not through you, but you can still benefit from their service.
Yeah, so don't think that just because you don't have a lot of money or you're not earning a lot of money that you can't see experts on money, because I think it really helps. And it did save me a lot as far as my super. I switched my super over once I saw a broker and saved a lot of money on fees, and then had got income protection and a whole bunch of things included with my super, and it was one of a really high growth super, and it gave me really good flexibility to change that when I wanted. And getting control of those things in your life is important. So even if you don't get an outcome from it, I think it's important to just start conversations like that, and maybe you have some questions that you're not sure about that you don't even know you want to ask. So it is important to see people who know more than you to get the understanding. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't cost you money. So we'll make sure of that anyway. But yeah, when I saw one, didn't cost me any money, swapped my super, it was great.
So also once you understand how much money you're spending on things and you've assessed your money values, you could work out ways that you can still treat yourself and have those things that you want, have those things that align with your money values, but try to do it in a smarter way. So I came home from a trip to visit my friend earlier this week, and Chris had surprised me with tickets to Book of Mormon and a booking at a French restaurant. And part of me was like, of course, very excited, but also a little bit wary of how much it cost and like whether we're in a situation to afford a treat like this at the moment. But how did you manage to get them cheaper?
Well, basically, I went into the theatre and spoke to the lady instead of just trying to buy them online, the tickets. And I saw that there were a couple of cheaper tickets that I wanted to get, and some were a bit site restricted. So I just wanted to go in and make sure that they were the proper ones, because I wanted to actually see the Book of Mormon. So they're only here for a few weeks, and it was, a bit selfish on my part. But yeah, I think Haley's pretty keen to see it again. So, yeah, I went in, saw them. And she was very helpful, and I got the tickets for $50 each, which I think is really good for a big theatre show like that.
But didn't you like register for cheap release tickets or something like that?
Yeah, like there's lotteries as well. So there's definitely lots of ways. So even if you went to the actual theatre itself and were there at 5:00, you could actually register for a lottery that they'll draw in person, as well as you can register for lotteries online as well. And the tickets become $40, and then the in-person ones are $30. So, there's definitely ways if you want to do things to just dig a little bit deeper and go see something like a show, or go to the movies on a Tuesday, things like that you can do. And then with the French restaurant, I actually booked it through The Fork. So I'm not sure if this is available overseas, but in Australia you can book through restaurants through an online platform. And then some of them, if you book at certain times, they're actually going to dinner at 5:30 p.m. So we're doing the bloody old school early bird special. But we get 50% off the food bill. So it's a nice restaurant in the city. We're going to catch the ferry there, so we're not paying for parking and those sorts of things. And, we get 50% off the food bill, and we can pay for drinks if we want to, which is not included in the 50% off. But there are definitely ways to treat yourself in a budget way.
Yeah, like maybe you could use Groupon. That's another way that you can still have the treat, but just pay less. Or shopping on Shopback, where you get a portion of your spend back in cash. Things like that. Also important to recognize that when you are treating yourself, sometimes the stress of treating yourself can actually outweigh the pleasure of treating yourself. So work out if you are really reaping the benefits of spending that money, or if it actually makes you feel better to refrain. And then another thing you can assess when you are understanding your financial situation is, do you need to increase your income? Like, if there's no way to reduce your spending and still be happy and still live in line with your values, do you just need to simply earn more money? Now, for example, you could ask for a promotion at work or a pay rise at work, but you should also recognize that there are consequences to that sometimes. So say you get a promotion, you get more money, but maybe you have to work more hours. Maybe you have more stress. Is that actually worth having more money in your life?
Yeah, so you do have to look at this as, okay, if I'm working more hours, more responsibility, and I'm getting more money, well, what does my hourly rate then work out to? So you may even be getting a demotion and you don't know it. So you do have to be aware of that. Then there's also knowing your worth, like, for an example, Haley's dad makes a lot of honey all the time, then he just gives it away, where there definitely is a market for that extra honey. And that, it may not be much money, but it's still like knowing the worth of he's going to all this effort. And of course he feels good by giving the honey away and that sort of thing. But, having that little bit of extra money, people are happy to pay for it. People almost feel bad not paying for this thing that they've done all this work for. And
my dad's money attitude is like, if you make any money for your hard work, you're ripping people off.
Yeah. So I think we'll get to Mitch's question now, because I think this fits in. So with your budget template, why have you built it the way you have? And does it support your money goals? And can you make it available to share? So you've created some templates before that we've used, and they're pretty good. But what do you feel about this new one that you're using now?
So the one I got is a budget spreadsheet from the She's on the Money podcast / Facebook group. So one of the hosts of that podcast is Victoria Devine, and she's a financial advisor, I think, and she's created a spreadsheet for people to download. So I downloaded that and I just adapted it for our needs. So I cut out some things just to make it more streamlined, and effectively it is knowing what your income is, knowing what all of your expenses are, and then your savings goals and the frequency at which that is paid, and then working out what your annual spend on all of those things are. So because we work for ourselves, this was really interesting for us, because we worked out what our income was and then what our, for the year, and then what our yearly expenses were. And we then had a figure where we thought, okay, this is how much we need to earn this year to be able to live, basically. So it's kind of the opposite of when you earn a salary, where you get an amount and then you have to set your spending to fit within that amount. It was like, okay, this is how much we need to live. Now this is how much we need to earn to cover that, and also to reach our savings goals. So in answer to your question, I would say that yes, the budget does support our savings goals, and I can make it available for people to download, but I can't take credit because I didn't create it.
Yeah, so if you do want it, just let us know in the comments, and then we can get it over to you. Just let us know you want that budget spreadsheet.
Yeah, I can email it to you.
Yeah, that's cool. So, with the receipts, Kathy, I'm not sure about the US, but yeah, definitely here in Australia, they're sort of like heat related, I guess. So the machines that print receipts use heat onto the plastic to create the receipt. And
that's why they're shiny.
They're shiny and waxy. So they may be different in the US, and obviously we're speaking from our experience here in Australia, and maybe there are some paper receipts around, but I guess it's always safer just to refuse, and you can just write them down, like you said. I think there are options for that as well. Yeah,
I definitely agree with your point on saying putting it in writing. I think you're referring to, say, your money goals. Definitely seeing your goals every day and writing it down contributes to your success in reaching that goal. What's next?
So what are your financial pressures?
Okay, so I think social pressure is a big one for people, keeping up with the Joneses, trying to spend as much as your friends are spending, or even just not being able to say no to things that will cost you money.
Yeah. I think, I definitely dealt with that in the future.
In the past.
Oh, sorry. In the past, I've dealt with that. So social pressures are a big one, especially, living here in Brisbane and Australia, like we've noticed a bit of a shift of, I'm going to use the word pretentiousness, but that's not maybe the best word, but, going out to be seen, going out to restaurants, going out to bars is the thing to do. So
the trendy bars with the trendy drinks that cost a lot of money, and getting taxis in there and dressing up like to a higher standard than what we've seen other places in the world.
Yeah. So being mindful of all those things and going, is this actually making me happy, or am I just doing this to please other people? So that can be a hard one to do as well. And we spoke about it a little bit last week in intentional living is, finding people who, by knowing your values, you find people who have similar interests and similar values, and it just makes you happier to be around those people, and you know who they are. So these people who are maybe pushing you into social situations that don't fit with your values are maybe those similar people that don't have the same values as you.
Or maybe they do have the same values, but they're just in a different financial situation, and that's fine. Like, you don't need to cut them out of your life, but you just need to recognize what your financial situation is, recognize that maybe that is a pressure that you can't deal with, and then assessing that and changing something about it. So you can still hang out with those people, but maybe just have a picnic or a barbecue, or invite them over to your home for dinner instead of going out for dinner and drinks and clubbing and all of that stuff. Another financial pressure could actually be your partner's spending. So if you share money and they spend money on something that you're not comfortable with, or it's something that's impeding on your financial goals, or it's even just making you resentful, then that's something that you need to assess and become intentional with. So for example, my ex and I used to share the grocery bill, but he would eat like more than double what I did, and I was resentful having to pay for that. So we just had to change that situation. Some people are very happy, like if you're in a partnership, you just pay for that. That's just like a part of dating. But some people may think differently about that.
Yeah, so how we deal with that is we, set ourselves some pocket money each week. And then that money, you can spend it however you want and not feel judged for it. And I think that's important, because there can be resentment there when, someone is spending money on something that you don't agree with, and, you feel like they're taking from your money, or taking from the partnership money. So talking that out, and if your money values really don't align and there's a big disparity, then, maybe someone...
then maybe you just need to break up and never see each other ever again.
Well, I'm not going that far, but maybe sharing money is not a good situation for you at this time, and maybe you can reassess it later on. And I mean, that may be a different topic that I'm not too clued up on, and don't want to say that's what you should do, but that may be something you look at to then get away from resentment, because I think money can be a big one in relationships that breaks it up. So I think, being open and honest and understanding each other's money values and life values and how they're aligning at the moment. And
your goals, where you're working towards.
Yeah, so there's a lot that it's involved with this stuff to try and get you on the same page, and, maybe starting the conversations. It's not going to happen straight away, and we're always still working on this stuff and creating new budgets and seeing where our money's going and all those sorts of things. So
because your life situation changes as well, and so your budget needs to change to reflect that. So maybe you change jobs and you earn less money but you're happier, or maybe you go traveling and spend your entire life savings, whatever. But the pocket money thing really works for us, because that's our non-judgmental spending. Like we share our money and we've got the same goals and values around all of that. And then we have $40 per week that goes to each of us, and we can spend that on whatever we want. So, for example, I go get beauty services that Chris doesn't get. So that would come out of that. And it means that I don't feel guilty either. Like, so we didn't have pocket money when we were traveling, and I really regret that, because there were things while we were traveling that I would have wanted to spend my money on, but I didn't, because I felt guilty about detracting from our shared money. Did you have that same thing?
Yeah, I think maybe not as much as you, because I
You were like, I am a frugal traveler.
Yeah, I was sort of in a mindset, like, I guess I was just so fearful of coming home back to real life that I was like, whatever money I don't spend, I know will go that little bit further for us. So I think we're a little bit different, but yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and I sort of wish we did that a little bit and maybe cut our trip a little bit shorter, but we did what we did, we are where we are, so we just have to look at that as a lesson for the future. If we end up doing a bigger trip later, or even just a shorter trip, we need to have some personal money. And Lorna says having an allowance for each person in the house has helped with their budget tremendously. So I think that is important to know. It's like not only just for the relationship and the sharing of the money that can help in that situation, but also with the budget. I think knowing that you have that allowance to spend it on whatever you want, you're not tempted to then treat yourself later to a bigger event that may, set you guys back, or do it out of resentment that you're going to spend some money that maybe you guys aren't, both happy with spending either.
We also had a conversation the other day about how we each differently deal with asking the other person about, like, before we spend money. So I noticed that I would ask Chris, well, not ask permission, but just like touch base before spending money on anything, really. Whereas there were some things that you knew that it aligned with my values.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you were doing anything wrong. And it was working towards our shared goals.
Yeah.
But you just like would go buy those things without letting me know first. And it's not that that was a bad thing to do, but it was just something worth talking about, where we assess whether we are comfortable with going to spend money without letting the other person know, or if we do need to have a conversation about each spending before we do it.
Yeah, and I think I was making the decision by myself, but I was like going through the process of understanding this is really going to benefit us for this reason, and if I do it, it's going to really help us. So why wouldn't I? And instead of like telling that to you and just sharing the conversation, because I knew you would have said yes.
Yeah.
And if not, then again, we would have broken up and seen each other again. But I think, it is important to have those conversations, even if you know that these are aligning. Still having the conversation so everyone's on board is good. And I think we'll just jump into Kathy's question. She said, did you learn your emotional ties and handling of money from your parents? So did you want to answer this first? Because I might need a little bit of time to answer this one.
Oh,
because it's worded really well, and I'm trying to figure it out still.
I would say yes. I don't know what you mean by emotional ties, but yes, in terms of like my money attitude, as in debt is bad. That's definitely something that, like, an attitude that my parents have, but then also we'll probably never be rich people. That's an attitude of theirs that I have absorbed as well, and I'm trying to change that, because I don't think there's anything wrong with being rich. I think if you earn your money, and if you don't be a dick about acquiring that money, and if you're smart with it, then you absolutely can be rich. And it doesn't make you a bad person or selfish or materialistic. It just means that you have more of a resource to live in line with your values.
Yeah, so that's really good. And yeah, I think it's hard for me to go back that far and see if I did learn it from my parents, because I've been so independent for a long time, like since I was 17, and now I'm 21. So no, and now I'm 30. So yeah, I think I've been very independent, and I'm a very proud person. I know that I don't like to borrow money. I don't like to, ask people for money. I like to support myself and figure it out. So I do what I can where I need to with my money, and if I earn it and I want to spend it, then I will do that too, which has brought me up a few problems before. So I think maybe I'm self-taught with my emotional ties. I don't know. Like, I think, of course, I've probably taken some from my parents and understand like what can happen with money if you work hard. I think I've got my working attitude from my parents. They're very hard workers, very loyal, very reliable. So I think I've got a lot of things from them, but I can't necessarily pinpoint something from my parents that I got in regards to my money. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Kathy, I agree that we all have emotions that we tie to money, and I think that plays into being intentional about your money, like working out what emotional ties you have, like what might actually be triggered when you do try to understand your financial situation and be in control of that.
Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to our next point. Thanks for all the questions, guys. Really appreciate these.
Yeah, they're interesting and like well thought out questions.
Yeah. And yeah, so yeah, we'll get into talking about money and things like that as well to get to your question again there, Kathy. So communication and accountability. So being accountable and having someone to be accountable to, I think, is important. So we use each other to do that, and we have these regular meetings because I think it is important to talk about money, and you know, it almost is a reassessment each week to say, okay, this is the position we're in, and knowing that, then we can move forward comfortably without having that, without second guessing what we're spending or what we're doing. You know, like you can get to a stage where you haven't spoken about money or looked at your money situation for a month, and you would be like, oh, I think this, I think, yeah. So being sure about your money is a really good position to be in. It's freeing. You lose that anxiety around money as well.
I'm very glad that we are having this conversation with our group, because I am definitely the driver of these money conversations and the spreadsheets and the admin and whatever. It's not that you're against talking about money. I think it's that you are resistant to admin and sitting down.
Yeah, I don't really love to sit down too much. So
yeah, sit down and do one thing at a time.
Yeah, unless it's talking to you guys, of course. Sit here for hours. So yeah, the budget meetings, accountability partners, and then your rewards. So I guess it's, you might go into the rewards a bit more, I think.
Basically, if you have money goals and you're doing what you need to intermittently work towards those goals, then feel free to reward yourself, because that maintains your motivation.
Yep.
Just make sure that your reward doesn't impede upon reaching that goal.
Yeah, so having something to save for can really help with that. Like, you know, having a vision board or having something on the fridge where you're seeing it every day saying, this is what I'm working hard towards, this is what I'm sacrificing for. It also helps with things like the gym and that sort of thing. Like for me anyway, if I have something to train for, if I have a goal in the future or an intention, because we're still like not sure on which is better at the moment, the debate is still out. But if you have something that you're working towards, it makes it easier. And then, you know, if you're in with a money partner, like you're sharing money, then having them be accountable and making sure that you're honest and open with that is really good as well. Yes.
So this is talking about our financial goals. So yes, important to set goals. Like sometimes you have to save for a long time to reach a financial goal. So a good way to do that is to create a savings bank account that you can't otherwise access. Like you have to jump through so many hoops to then take the money out of that. And maybe you might be someone who likes to see it grow, that's motivating, or maybe you're someone who needs to keep that savings account in another bank and not even think about it, and you just automatically transfer savings to it every pay. Something that works for us is getting paid and putting our income into our savings account first, or like a savings account, not the one that we can't touch, and then taking our spending out of that. So it's like the opposite of what you might otherwise do, where you get paid into your spending account and you take your savings and put it in another account. Savings comes first, and then you have to go through that manual process of taking money away from that lump sum for you to then spend. And I really like the Barefoot Investor steps, where you create different buckets or bank accounts for different purposes. And I find that automating those savings and automating your bills really helps. I was very resistant to it at the beginning because I felt out of control, like being direct. I've always tried to avoid direct debits. I like to pay things manually, partly out of a sense of control, but also because I then get a little like buzz from like ticking something off my list. But in a busy world, it's better just to not think about it and have your money work, like your bank account sort of working away for you automatically without you having to put in any effort.
Yeah, and even doing like a flow chart of what it looks like really helps. Like putting it on paper first so you understand, okay, here's my income here, and then these are the bank accounts, and then these are my bills. So, like Haley said, we get paid into a savings account and then we distribute it to our spending account and then like another account where the bills are paid out of. So having a few accounts will help, and obviously not complicating it too much, but like instead of having all your money in your spendings that you have access to easily and then putting whatever's left into savings can be a bit of a trap. So instead, putting all your money into savings and then giving yourself spendings, it'll also give you a bit of a bad feeling when you go to spend something, or not a bad feeling, but make you think a bit more critically, because you may go,
it's just being conscious of your spending, really.
Yeah, because you go, I'm taking out of my savings now to spend that, instead of, I have it there, I'll spend it, and then I'll just put less into savings. So it's sort of just flipping that on its head and just having a bit of a mindset shift around that.
So Kathy has said, I'm very proud of you two, and Chris, you're very lucky to have such a smart cookie to help you to do better. Thank you, Kathy. That's really nice. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah, we love that. But yeah, so what's our next one? So savings first, we've done that. Creates a why for sacrifice. Comfortable in saying no. So yeah, creating those boundaries with each other, being accountable.
Yeah, don't feel like you're the bad guy for saying no to spending.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually it's like tough love.
Yeah, it's definitely like better for the long run. Like an example would be, before we went away on our big trip, I wanted to do a weekend away down at Byron Bay because we just love Byron. We haven't been there for so long. We wanted to see it before we left. And yeah, Haley worked out the budget and she said no. So I was disappointed. And, I didn't speak to her for like 3 days. But it was the right decision because, working it out would have cost $600 just for a weekend. And, that money could have been better spent on our big trip we were going on. Yeah. So we still haven't been to Byron and I still hate her for it. But we'll go on to our final tips and we'll wrap this up, and then we'll do a couple of questions at the end if you guys have got anything. Also, let us know if you like us, answering the questions as we go, or you want us to do them all in one hit at the end. I know this is going for about an hour, so you guys can't hang around the whole time, but we're happy to do either way or a bit of both. But yeah, we'll get into talking about money and answer your question, Kathy, as well, in this final tips part.
Yeah, so like I said, automation really helps with your financial habits. I liken it to having a morning routine. Mm-hmm. You create a routine, it comes out of habit. It's like you do the things you need to do without the discipline, without the decision making around it. You just do it because it's habit. And that's what automation, you don't have to make that financial choice every time you work towards your goals. It happens without your sort of human weakness or strength, whatever you may be feeling on the day. Another main thing I want you to take from this chat is it feels good to be in control. It doesn't mean you have to be controlling. It just means you need to understand your situation, what you have, what your commitments are, where you want to go, what you need to say no to, and feeling good with sacrificing for those greater goals.
See an expert. So like I talked about before, like a broker or a financial advisor, someone like that, even if it's at your own bank, so you can sort of see where your financial situation, they may give you some options. You don't have to take them up on this as well. So, take some time, make the decision, but getting that expert advice can really help. And like I said, most of the times it's free, and they actually get their commissions based off their recommendations and things like that. So really look into that. Look at trying to see someone to really discuss your money situation and what you can be doing better with your money. Because I know there's an attitude of just sticking your money in savings, and that can be a bit of a trap as well, because the interest and that sort of thing is not beating inflation. So there's all these things, and reading some books really helps as well. So
yeah, again, unless your parents are quite money savvy and take the time to teach you when you grow up, or that's pretty much the only way I can think about it, because we don't learn this stuff in school. So you have to be proactive about it and learn more than what you grow up knowing.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And as Kathy said, did you discuss money with your parents? I mean, there was discussions, but it wasn't like like you do with your children, where you you have them there when you pay a bill to give them clarity on what things cost. So I think that's a great start to say, hey, you guys, this is how much money this stuff costs. So you either need to be grateful, or they might appreciate it more, or they might start to have an understanding of like what it's really like to live in the real world and not be sheltered from that. So I think that definitely helps. And talking about money with trusted friends and even work colleagues, I think this attitude of keeping money to yourself and don't talk about money, I'm not sure where this attitude has come from. And I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, so I feel like it comes from the rich, so that no one or the bosses tell you don't tell anyone, because they might be paying this guy more and this guy less. And
well, I think you've got two different points here.
Yeah.
So
okay.
One point is the money that you earn at work, and the fact that we don't talk about how much we earn is contributing to the gender pay gap, because as women we don't know what men are earning doing the same work. And like, we are not going to get into this on this particular topic, but I would just say, like, try to find out what people are earning and be upfront about what you are earning, because I think that's going to help everyone in the long run create equality with pay. And then the other topic you were talking about is that social taboo around talking about money. So only recently have my girlfriends and I started talking about how much we earn. And yeah, like, we would always go out and spend our money without any understanding of whether our friend was actually in a position to do that, and whether we were creating social pressure or whether we were bowing to social pressure that they were creating. And I think if you can have honest relationships about money and remove that taboo, then everyone's going to be better off, because you're going to be more comfortable saying no. If you can't afford something, you're going to be more motivating of each other and creating accountability if you've got certain money goals, and more encouraging of people working towards those goals and not detracting from them.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. It's like, if you're talking about money amongst your friends, then you can go, oh, okay, this person doesn't actually earn as much as I do, or this person earns way more. So then you can be more strategic about what you're inviting them to and what you're asking them to do. Because, yeah, like, I've definitely got some friends who earn way more money than me, and then, they'll invite me to trips away and things like that. And, I'm usually pretty keen to go, and we've actually started saying no to a lot more things.
And then bitch wife comes along and doesn't let you go on these trips.
Bitch wife is a great descriptor. But it's important to do that, and then I don't feel so much pressure later on to earn more money or anything like that. So it does sit in line with our values, and I do miss out sometimes, but I have such good friends that the quality time will come later on, and they're going to be more appreciative that I can make the effort when I can, and that sort of thing. So I know there's a big movement around saying no in the entrepreneur area, and like Tim Ferriss talks about it a lot, and there's some good things on knowing what you're worth with your own time as well, and saying no will actually help you get better, get more towards your own goals as well. So I think that's important.
And then some of our favorite resources, so I've definitely mentioned them in this conversation, is the Barefoot Investor book. I know there is some controversy around his subscription program where he gives people investment advice. I don't really know anything about that, but I have read the book and it did really help us. It's very easy to read, very practical and realistic steps for people to take at any stage in their financial journey. And then the She's on the Money podcast, it's Australian. And I really like it because it's about millennial women and how women have different pressures to men on how we spend our money. And it just encourages women to be assertive, be in control, be independent of their own finances. And then you actually gave me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that's what changed my attitude in terms of just sort of being stuck as a salary man for the rest of my life, and then being in a position where I have unlimited earning potential, where it's like you pay yourself first rather than you earn money, pay tax, and then have to live off the rest of it. It's very interesting, highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think that's a great book to start out. Like, it teaches you things, how the rich actually do what they do. Like he shows his perspective from living with his family who, had a poor mindset, and then having like a rich mentor, I guess, in a family, and seeing the difference in how they how they use their money differently and what knowledge they have. So I think this is a really good book, and I'm sure a lot of you have read it, but if you haven't, I would definitely read this book. It can change your mindset a lot of things, and realize that you're not going to be stuck in the rat race forever if that's not what you want. So yeah, I think we covered a lot of stuff today, and we hit around the hour, which is good, and we had some really good questions from you guys. Really appreciate you all jumping in when you can. Let us know if you have any final questions, and we'll stick around for a little bit to answer them.
I like your point, Julie, where intentional money is knowing what you need but focusing more on what you can give. And I think that's coming back to what your personal values are, and being intentional about your money so that your money can support your personal values.
Yeah, and I think Kathy as well, like if they're deep in debt, and you won't be, and that improves your quality of life in the long run as well. So I'm really of the mindset of
I have a good term for this.
Okay, you go.
Don't live fake rich now, because you'll be real poor later.
Yeah, nice one. Kathy suggested Suze Oman and the Beards. Susie or Suze? Suze Orman and the Beardstown Ladies. Okay, great. Thanks for the recommend.
I'm a Beardstown lady. I go to Beardstown all the time.
Oh my god.
We're out.